And the other guy I'm wrestling is a couple years older than me, and he was like, hey, but our boss comes in and goes, this is a make or break for you, Paul. You know, if you screw this up, they're probably going to release you.
The other guy.
Correct. Yeah. And he had already been on SmackDown and didn't go well, and so he was kind of trying this new character out. And so he looks at me and he's like, hey, I think the way to get this over is we should actually really fight. I said, oh, okay. And I'm going to be really physical. I'm going to beat the heck out of you. But fight back. And I said, got it. Okay, sweet.
From the IT company, it's Made Right Here, the stories of East Tennessee founders, creators, and builders. From the idea behind it to the impact it had on the community, their employees, and their personal lives, we're taking you behind the scenes of the movements they built. Did you have a dream as a kid to do something, but nobody believed that you could actually do it? Like it was so far-fetched that nobody believed it could ever happen? Hey, I'm Paul Sponcia with the IT company. Thanks for joining me on the Made Right Here podcast. Today, I've got Devin Driscoll of D1, and this story is just awesome. I love Devin, and the crazy thing about what I said to begin with is Devin wanted to be a WWE wrestler, and that happened. He became that wrestler. And so we get to hear the twists and turns as he led up to doing that growing up in Knoxville, kind of really pursuing that dream the whole time while doing other stuff. We also get to hear something really cool. Someone who lived through 9/11 in New York City while they were in college and how that affected just everything about them in the future. So listen in to episode 1 from Devin Driscoll.
I was born in Englewood, New Jersey. We moved here when I was 7. My dad got a job at Whittle Communications downtown.
God, so many people have that story.
I know. It's crazy. You know, you said tentacles a second ago. There's the Whittle tentacles that are all over this town. And we moved here for that. And I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad and mom, when they told my sister and I that we're moving to Tennessee, I was, 6 or 7 at the time. I was like, huh? Where's that? Because we were in a little bubble up in the New York area. So we moved here when I was 7. I went to Sacred Heart School over here off North Shore. Went there, and then after Sacred Heart, went to Knoxville Catholic when I was here off Magnolia.
You went to this campus?
I went to this campus for the first 3.5 years, and my senior year was the year in January that we moved to Cedar Bluff.
So you spent one semester at Cedar Bluff?
One semester. We were the first class to graduate, which is kind of cool.
Wow, cool.
And then, so I grew up. I always say, I grew up here. I don't remember anything before moving here.
Where's Englewood?
Englewood is right outside the New York, New Jersey area. So my mom's from New Jersey. So all of her doctors were there. Okay. By the time we were living in the city.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
And what do your parents do?
So my dad has a company called Madison Media Works here in town.
Still?
He still has.
Oh.
So he still has his company. My mom is a stay-at-home mom. Has been since my sister was born.
Okay. And so she's older than you or younger?
My sister's younger. She's 3 years younger. She works for my father now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that's cool.
Huh. I went the other way.
Well, tell me, about your parents and like what kind of influence did they have? Do you have memories of like what we were just talking, lefty loosey, righty tighty?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was saying, like my wife can probably build anything you ever ask. She could walk in Home Depot and know exactly where everything is and build anything. I'm like, huh? But my dad and my dad was successful in his career and was very involved in his career. So he was very focused on that as I was a child, and I got to see what it meant to put the work in and hard work. And I think what I took most from him was that he was always first up, early up, and then at home late. But he always found time to still make my games and make my practices. I'll never forget that about my dad. And then I think my earliest memories for them was, I was very into sports. That was kind of my thing, specifically basketball. So when I was growing up, I was constantly, this is kind of pre-AAU becoming the thing to do. So I was constantly doing, whether it be 3-on-3 tournaments, pickup, high school, whatever it was, I was constantly going. And they were always supportive of that. And so I think some of my earliest memories growing up was really just spending time with my friends playing pickup basketball and doing the tournaments and just doing the fun stuff that you do as a kid. I think back to now and doing now, it's just like it's evolved so much, youth athletics, but back then you would just go and meet people at the park, right? Yeah. I think I learned that the work ethic from my dad, from my mom was a great mom, was a very passionate person. So I think when I think about her is when she is passionate about something or she believes in something, she's all in. And
Is that you? You think you're that way?
I think so. Whether our passions always align or not, it's not, here nor there. But like, when I'm into something or I'm all in, I'm all in. I'm never one of those guys that has one foot in. I'm either all in or I'm all out. And so I definitely think that's probably what I took from her more than anything.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I was just thinking of something, just a memory that I'm curious if you have this. Were you the house, or do you remember the house where everybody wanted to be? You know what I'm talking about? It's like the house with the pool, or whatever. Was that your house, or was that
It's so
house?
funny you said it. So we were talking this the other day. We just moved, my wife and I, and we were talking about that's what I want. I want to be the house where the kids want to be at. Selfishly, because I want to be around my kids.
Right.
And then another thing, from a safety perspective, you can have a little bit of control, right?
Yeah.
I think we were lucky enough that we were probably with one of the houses. We didn't have the pool, but we had a really cool basement.
Yeah.
And so like we had the pool table and the TVs and stuff like that. So we definitely, and with a house that we'd want to stay the night at, we'd have sleepovers at. And I think some of my fondest memories are waking up on Saturday morning and my dad having Krispy Kreme donuts and fresh squeezed orange juice and all my buddies sitting around and reading the paper from the game before, the night before we had basketball. Because back then you wanted to see what Prep Extra said the next day about you, and so I think that's some of my fondest memories were definitely that. We were that. And then my other buddy's house had the cool pool. So it was kind of a back and forth deal, but we definitely, I would say, are more likely the house that gets rad. Well, one of my buddies never left. So like, he would go to school on Monday morning. I'm like, hey, my buddy's still upstairs. Mom's like, well, we're taking Norm to school, I guess. Like it was just one of those things. Like we had kids that would just stay, my buddies that would just stay. And then, it was cool too because we had a full court basketball in our neighbors. Actually, Governor Haslam now was down the road from us, and he had a full court basketball court in his backyard, and we just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he would let us use it. He let us use it. The neighborhood kids use it, so we'd run over there and go play basketball in the afternoons all the time. So that we had some advantages to being the house that kids want to stay at.
Oh yeah. What neighborhood?
It was Westmoreland.
Westmoreland. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. So, high school, you went to Catholic, which is obviously I think now, like, you see the influence that Catholic is having athletically.
Right.
I don't follow it enough to know what it's having from other. I'm sure it's having an impact in a lot of other ways too. But you see a lot of athletes coming out of there. What do you think? How do you think you're influenced the most in high school? By who? In what ways? And I want you to think of it from the perspective of like Devin today. Running D1, having, built a company next level, built the wrestling organization that you built, like, what in high school do you look at now and be like, man, this really influenced me to be the guy I am now?
In high school, there was a guy named Don Holacek, and Don now owns Crown Cleaners here locally. Don was our teacher at the time. He was a teacher at Catholic, and he also coached basketball and coached golf. So I played golf in the fall, primarily for two reasons. One, it was something my dad and I could do together, and I didn't want to do conditioning for basketball, so the combination of two really was good. But nevertheless, I was around him basically the whole year for a couple of years, and so of any of the people I was around most of my life, I'd argue he was probably him the most. And he was young. I mean, Don was at the time, mid-20s. So when you're like a 16-year-old kid and you've got this 23 or 24-year-old guy that's not that much older than you, but was always there. And I had like a lot of kids at that age went through a lot of things like we all do, and he was just kind of a person that I could go to for advice and issues. So the other one was a guy named Patrick Donovan, who was our youth leader over at Sacred Heart. So we would go to our youth group on Wednesday nights, and it was fun, and like it really was something we enjoyed going to. But then he wanted to make it such, but then in the same respect, he wanted to make it something we could he wanted to get something out of for our faith and talk about our faith. And in reality, that's something that I took when I started Next Level, and then when I bought D1, I wanted to make sure we kept, which was having the place where kids want to be, but parents feel comfortable with them being at. And that's a hard bridge to have, and I think I learned that from Patrick Donovan, our youth leader back in the day.
Is there anybody that really pushed you or really kind of brought something out of you? I mean, you're a physically gifted guy, so I'm sure people saw like, hey, there's something in you. So is there anybody that really pushed you to the next level?
I would say the two people. One was Coach Holacek, and I think it was my sophomore year. I was supposed to be put on varsity for basketball. And then all of a sudden the list comes out. I was told I was going to make varsity. And we were stacked. I remember the senior class had like 13 out of 15 spot or some ridiculous amount of time. I'm like, all right. But I was like, hey, you're gonna. I was all excited. List comes out, I'm not on it. And it was just a killer for me, ego wise, and it was a killer for my confidence. And he was the JV coach, and a lot of my friends over on the JV team. And I just remember like, well, this will be fun. And he looked at me, he goes, this will make you the leader I think you could be by playing on this team. And you know, obviously we were able to achieve a lot of cool things my junior, senior year of basketball at Catholic, but that sophomore year was the most fun I've ever had in sports. And I think him, you know, investing me then was huge. And then after that, there was a guy named Jeff Mallory. My senior year, I was having a good year, and I always wanted to play college basketball, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to or not. You know, I was kind of like, it seems like a pipe dream, whatever. And he's the first guy that said, yeah, you're going to play college basketball if you want. And he's like, it's up to you now. And he's the one that got in my ear and was like, why not? And then going in my senior year, I was going to camps and stuff. I was like, maybe I could. And he was like, yeah, why can't you? And no one's ever said, like, I never looked at it like that. Like, I always just thought, I don't think there's never going to be a kid like, you know, redheaded kid from Knoxville, Tennessee is not going to go and play college basketball. But he was this guy that said, why not?
He made you believe.
He made me believe, and he changed my mindset. And I think at you know, when you're in high school, you have a built-in mindset of something, and you start to develop your own kind of way of thinking. And whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just the way you look at it. And he was very influential to me of changing that mindset in a positive way.
Other big influences growing up, or like really like important memories, like this is something that really shaped me or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, not jumping ahead a little bit, but you know, in college, my sophomore year, I was going to Fordham University.
So you went to, let's back up on that. You graduated Catholic, you went to Fordham, but you played.
So I got opportunities to play basketball at some schools. Then I had an opportunity to play golf at Fordham. And again, I played golf for fun.
That's
and
weird.
I played it just because I didn't want to really. At first, I was like, gosh, conditioning in the fall. And this is a year, and I think it's funny, I don't want to lift.
It's pretty funny, a guy that runs a.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't want to run, I don't want to lift. And then all of a sudden, my junior year, I started really enjoying it. And I was like, but I really started enjoying golf too. So it was a weird, so I did both. And so I'd go to the team workouts, and then I'd go to golf, or vice versa. I made every one for both of them.
Wow.
And I started really enjoying both of them. And then my dad ended up being our golf coach, my junior year assistant golf coach. And so it was something, again, we could do together. And then my senior year, ended up having a pretty good golf season. I was like, oh, this is fun, you know, whatever. And again, I didn't think anything of it. Then I was like, wait, you can get scholarship money for golf? Like, I was like, whoa, this is cool. Both my parents went to Fordham a lot, and so they both went up there. And they're like, you should check this out. But at that point, I had kind of really believed and thought, and was all in on, I wanted to wrestle for WWE.
Already?
Yeah,
In high school?
I wanted to wrestle for WWE since I was like 3. So we went. My fondest memory as a kid is the only memory I have really of being in New York was it was my third birthday. Went to Madison Square Garden. Hulk Hogan went down the aisle, smacked my hand, and then he ripped off his shirt, which was like, oh.
Yeah.
And he threw it. My dad caught it. My dad is not a wrestling fan. Caught it and handed it next to me, handed it to me. So I still have that shirt.
That's awesome.
But yeah, this is what I was going to do. It was done. It was my head. I was going to do it. And I chose to go to Fordham instead of some other opportunities because it was about a 45-minute drive to WWE's corporate headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut.
Okay.
So my thought process was I can go up there, I can get a really good education, I can leverage it to getting a networking opportunity, hopefully in their corporate office. I don't know how I was going to do it, but I said I was going to figure this out. And so that was my thought process. And so I went up there and all of a sudden, you're like, hey, the golf coach, you could maybe try out for the basketball team because they're a pretty legit basketball team. Or we'd give you a spot in the golf team and give you some help. So when I went up there and I met with Julio Diaz, the AD at the time, and he's like, yeah, we want you to play golf. I met the coach, loved the coach. And then I got up there and I realized every college athlete realizes this is a job.
It's work, yeah.
And, you know, golf to me was never that. It wasn't a passion of mine. And I really started enjoying training and lifting and training. And I was so focused on wanting to become a wrestler that I decided not to play golf after I got up there and just put full steam ahead into my wrestling career
So you
and
didn't
education.
end up playing really any serious college athletics?
No.
Interesting. Where's Fordham?
It's in the Bronx, New York.
It's in the Bronx.
Yeah. So, and I went up to Fordham, and you know,
So I'm sorry, you grew up in Knoxville,
Mhm.
and now you're living in the Bronx, going to college.
Yeah, and for people that aren't familiar with Fordham in the Bronx, it's a different deal. And you know, Fordham is You walk in, and the campus is gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it's enclosed with gates. And you step out of that, you go in the front entrance, the botanical gardens right there, it's at the zoo. Oh, it's cool. Then you go on the other side, and then you're like, oh, this is Fordham Road. And it was a very eye-opening experience walking down Fordham Road, you know, protecting yourself, making sure you don't get jumped.
It's a rough area.
Yeah.
The backside of it.
And so being a 17-year-old kid from Knoxville, Tennessee, and, you know, you're going up there and really had only seen the campus once. And didn't see that side of it, by the way.
Oh, wow.
I came in the main entrance, never saw the back side.
Wow.
And then my roommate and I go out. We go out the back area to go to get food. We're like, oh, didn't know this was here.
How did you be here?
So it was different.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Huh. Where is it relative in the Bronx? Let's say, I mean, I know where Yankee Stadium is. So is there?
Yeah. So Yankee Stadium is on 161st, I think it is. So it's 20 blocks probably.
Okay.
But it's I mean it's probably about a 30-minute walk.
Oh,
Maybe a little less.
Did you do go to Yankees games and
we
do fun
did
stuff?
We did. Well, I mean, like I said,
I feel like this is a pretty cool experience going to New York City to go to college. I feel like
I'll tell you,
awesome.
it's totally different than anybody that One thing I look back on, a lot of my friends went to Tennessee, or UT, and it was a different college experience. We didn't have SEC football. There wasn't tailgating. There wasn't these things, but we had other things that were incredible. Like I got to go this. Unfortunately, my sophomore year, 9/11 happened, and so.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and so all the people in our not all, but a large majority of the people in our building had relatives that were involved. And
You were in the city. You were in college.
So yeah,
September 11th.
Probably the most influential thing that ever happened to me up to that point in my life was the night before, which was a Monday night. I used to go up. We did not get WWE's channel at the time. It was on TNN. We didn't get it in our dorm. So I would spend $1.50 or $2, whatever it was, train token to get there, and then I think it was $5 to get there on and back, about an hour and a half each way. That's not true, about 50 minutes each way to go to Times Square. We used to have a place called WWE New York, and I used to go in there, and I made friends with the bouncers. I wanted to pay the charge to get in. I had to go sit at the bar, but I had no money to eat, so I'd get a water and just watch wrestling and leave.
That's awesome.
But so I'm sitting there, and the night before there was a tryout show called Tough Enough. It was an old reality show they had, and I had made the last cut to be on the show, which was my sophomore year. I mean, I was on cloud nine. My roommate came with me. We were all excited. My dad was in town, staying at the Intercontinental down there. And I met with him afterwards. I told him the great news, and a guy named Al Snow, who was the trainer at the time, was talking to me about it. I mean, I wouldn't pause. I'm like, I was on a whole other level of excitement. Go home that night, Monday night. My dad's like, hey, just stay with me. I'm gonna go to the trades next day. The Twin Towers next day for a meeting. Just stay and we'll go breakfast and go back. And I had a class next morning at 8 a.m. I'm a morning person, as you know. I go to bed early and wake up super early. Go to class that morning. I overslept for the first time ever. I'm running to class. There's no one on campus. They're just dead.
You didn't know what happened.
No clue. And I go to class, teacher's not there, kids are not there. I'm like, literally, I got up and rushed and I'm like, what is going on? So I go back to my dorm. My two roommates are upstairs, and they'll get a 2-level dorm, and they're just like this, jaw drop, and they're seeing what's happening. And then all of a sudden, we look outside and we can see smoke. We're 30 minutes away.
Wow.
And so, long story short, I immediately think of
Your dad.
Mm-hmm. All the cell phone towers were down. All the TVs were down. The only thing was up was New York 1.
Wow.
And that was the local New York station. Yeah. And so we're like, I can't call my mom. I can't call my family. Somehow our internet eventually goes up hours later. Now, I have no idea what's going on with my dad. Like, I have no clue. And that's being selfish, because there was hundreds of kids in our dorm that had parents that worked there, or and I have a lot of friends that lost parents that were firemen or police officers that went there. And none of us have any idea what's going on.
As far as you know, your dad's there.
As far as I know, and I was supposed to be there with him. And so, as far as I know, I think my dad could be in trouble, right?
Wow.
Now, if you don't know my dad, he's not the most athletic human being in the world. But he, and I forget which bridge he ended up walking over to get home. But he ended up having to walk back, and it was a whole big thing. But anyway. Long story short, then eventually our internet goes up, and my buddy, one of my best friends went to Penn, AOL instant message me. It's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And finally I got in touch with my mom, but she hadn't heard from my dad. And I think it was, if I can recall correctly, it was that evening before I could hear from him. But yeah, so that was,
That's
I mean,
crazy.
that all happened my sophomore year.
Was he actually there? When
He
it
didn't
all
get
happened?
he didn't get
He
quite
hadn't
there.
made it
He
yet.
hadn't made it there yet. No.
Wow.
And then the thing that was if I hadn't have gotten to that point with tough enough, I probably would have just stayed with him and just gone there.
Yeah.
But I was like, I need to wake up tomorrow. I got to start training. The next day, I blew up my knee.
Ugh.
I played basketball, and they canceled the show anyway for a while. So it was neither here nor there. But that was definitely something that changed my entire life.
Yeah, that's a shape. I mean, I think just that whole event obviously changed a lot of people's lives and perspectives and stuff like that. But to be that close to it, and also to think like, I don't know where my dad is. He was supposed to be there. That's scary, and to know that you had all the friends that lost people, it had to be really tough.
Yeah, that time in New York was very different. I don't think if you didn't live there, there's no words to get really justice per se.
Yeah.
But like, I had, our neighbor, her name was Mo. Her father was a fireman that passed away. I mean, I could go on and on.
Did they close school for a little bit or anything?
I think it was 1 day or 2 days.
Just a
We had a
couple
visual,
days.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, it was my college experience was never the same after that in New York. I mean, I always think I kind of had two college experiences, pre and post.
Wow. What is Fordham an Ivy League school or?
No,
or?
it's quad. I mean, like it's considered kind of the step below Ivy League. It's specific, a lot of it has to do with the business school and the communications department they have there, because they have just such deep ties for internship opportunities in the city. So,
did you work at all? Like
I did
in high school or college or anything?
Every summer, my parents had a place at Key Island in South Carolina in the summers. So we would play, we'd have basketball camp. Dead period back then for all sports would be the third week of June. It would start, and then it would go all the way to August.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was no July as basketball athletics. So we would go down to, our last thing would be is I'd go to College of Charleston basketball camp with my buddy the end of June after team camp. And then I would stay down there for 5 weeks and work at a kids camp down there. And I loved doing that. And then in college, I started working, I wrote for the newspaper. And then after that,
wrote for the newspaper?
I was the editor of a sports at in high school, and then I did that in college. And then I took a job my junior year. I got an internship with WWE in their corporate communications department, and I did that my first semester. And then my second semester, I got a job with them in their corporate communications department.
Wow.
And then my senior year, I worked for Puff Daddy, P Diddy. I promoted for his clubs and did
all
marketing.
these things we're going to learn about Devin.
Yeah, I did. I did marketing. Yeah, I did marketing and advertising for his clubs. I learned a lot though. I mean, I got to promote parties, and it really kind of helped me when it comes to sales and what I liked and what I didn't like. I learned a lot from that though.
Were you at all close? Was he at all involved in anything you were doing, or was he kind of?
He would host the parties at these clubs in different places.
They had people,
and then they would be like. I couldn't even tell how many there was of us that would promote for him. We got to meet with him a couple times. There was nothing in depth or anything.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
My partner now that did with me, a guy named Mark Smith, is now the senior vice president of UBS.
Really?
In New York. He's on MSNBC all the time. We always talk about it. And like we learned more from probably that year in some respects than a lot of other things.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think just thinking about a little bit of what you're telling, it reminds me of the way that you can have really unique shaping experiences by kind of getting out of your comfort zone.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
If you just went to UT, not that you wouldn't get a great education and wouldn't have a great life. I'm sure you would if you went to UT. But the experiences that you got to be a part of because you decided to go to New York City, very different than what other people got to experience.
Yeah, I think when I think back to Fordham, my parents always said what kept me there was my junior year was the WWE deal.
Yeah.
But really, some of the stuff that I really took out of my time there, I can't tell you. I think I have two teachers I can tell you their names. But and they shaped a lot of who I am for sure. And one I still stay in contact with this day. But the majority of what I took from it was I would have never gotten a job promoting at a club or bar. And I never would have wanted it, frankly. It was just I needed money.
Yeah.
And my buddy was like, "Hey, I got this random opportunity. You want to do it?" I was like, and I wasn't a big partier. I didn't go to clubs. It wasn't who. It's not that I looked bad, or we didn't have fraternities at our school. We didn't have sororities. We didn't go to clubs with bars on campus, but it just wasn't part of, especially with 9/11, no one really wanted to party.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, I guess. But I learned so much from it. I didn't want to do it long term. But I also learned that like there's just so much of what I do today, and especially on the sales side, I took from that.
Huh. That's wild.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How did you meet your wife?
So when I left WWE, I really didn't know what I was. I mean, I wanted to work with kids, and I wanted to coach, and I was really passionate about training. But it was kind of the infancy of what we have now. It wasn't like D1 had opened, and it had some steam. But like outside of that, like it was still in its infancy stages, performance enhancement training. So, and I had trained people in college, and I had trained people after when I was in WWE. Even like I just enjoyed training people. I never charged anybody for it though. I just enjoyed doing it. And then I started kind of getting into a little more and more, and I started my business. But when I started my business, I was also working at Fort Sanders at the time, part-time.
Oh, were you really?
Mm-hmm.
Training at Fort Sanders?
I was, and so I had opportunities when I got out of college to work for different places in the area, in the fitness industry. Every one of them was salary but Fort Sanders. And I took the Fort Sanders one that was lowest money and the most time, but they had a really good, at the time, continuing education program. So I looked at like an opportunity to grow and take that time to learn more of what I didn't know about the field. And I had taken time to get certified and do all these different things, but like I knew they had some stuff I couldn't get anywhere else. So, and then I also knew I could network there because at the time they had a very good, and I don't know.
It was a place to be.
Yeah, it was back in 2007, 2008, and then it was a place everybody was at. So I was like, man, I can really kind of get my name out there.
Yeah.
So I was over there, and then I had a boss who was awesome. And she pulls me and she said, listen, you need to focus on your business. It's starting to grow a lot. Like, you don't need to be here. Like, this is wasting your time. Basically, she was trying to help me.
Yeah.
I think she's probably trying to fire me, but she didn't want to. And so, long story short, she's like, hey, like, go focus on this. So it was my last 2 weeks there. And there was a trainer there named Catherine Colhane who was leaving. And she was going to be a full-time teacher at UT. She's like, hey, I'm about to leave. I want to introduce you to this person. She's a major at Tennessee. She's training. She just wants to keep doing that. I was like, okay, whatever. And literally, I didn't think anything of it. The next day, I see this young lady running on the treadmill. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's beautiful. Who is that?" You know, and I didn't want to be that guy though. You know, and so I never dated somebody I was working with or anything like that. And I was like, "Ah." And then Kathy goes, "Oh, let me introduce this person. This is Allison." I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" And so it was her. And the next hour later, we worked out together that day. And one of the other coaches there, who's a good friend of mine named Katie Contreras, goes, "Hey, by the way, you're gonna marry that girl one day." I was like, okay, that's creepy. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. You know, fast forward 2 days before I get married, I don't see that Katie for years. And then 2 days before I get married, I see her, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm getting married in a couple of days." Good, that girl you told me I was going to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how we met. And
so you broke the trainer's rule. You dated your client.
Yeah.
Technically, maybe not.
Well, I mean, so we trained for a little bit, and then when we started, you know, realizing there were some feelings there, we stopped training together. And
that's awesome.
We've been together ever since.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to step back a little bit because I do want to talk about like there's this again, obviously this theme of like I want to be in the WWE, and like there's a lot of kids that say I want to be a professional athlete, you know, whatever, and they never do it. Somehow you did it. Can you walk us through a little bit more about like you're at Fordham internship? Like how did you ultimately get in the? Because you went from working there to being a performer, or athlete, whatever they're called.
Which is not usually a very common theme. They don't like to do that usually. I was always fascinated by the business. It was like when growing up, we all have stuff that stresses us out, right? And no family's perfect, no life's perfect. So whenever I'd get stressed, I'd just go watch wrestling. I'd collect the tapes. I'd call dirt sheets. I did everything. I can't tell you how many times I'd order a pay-per-view and somehow coerce my parents and think it was free. Or like, this is the pay-per-view days when, like, you know, if you didn't order the pay-per-view, it was like, you know, scratched out, but you could hear it though.
Right,
I'd be sitting there listening to the results or whatever. I loved it. And someone once told me, Dr. Tom said, for those that believe, no explanation is needed. For the ones that don't, none's good enough. And so with wrestling, that's kind of something that a lot of people thought of, like, either you love it or you hate it. There's just never very few people in between, right? So it's just something I always wanted to do, and I was like, I'm going to do it. People laughed at me all the time. My senior year, I voted most likely to become a professional wrestler in our yearbook, right? And, you know, everybody kind of like, oh, that's his thing, but, like, I don't think anybody actually thought
this was a known thing. Like, you said it out loud to other people.
Oh, yeah, I didn't care. And, like, you know, for a while there, wrestling was, you know, it got really hot in the late 90s, but for a while there, it was also kind of frowned upon prior to that, so, like, I didn't hide it. And people scoffed at it, and people joked about it, and I was like, okay. I never thought anything of it. And, you know, when you're in high school, people think there's like, oh, you want to go to the NFL, you want to be like, okay, eventually at some point, like, oh, he'll grow out of that, or they'll realize that's not their thing. And then wrestling, there's only one team, really, you know?
Right.
And so it's like, oh, it's not going to happen. When I got up to WWE, I found on a wrestling dirt sheet, like a rumor mill, that they had job postings, and one of them was for an internship. So I sent my resume in, you know, not knowing if I was good or not. And my good buddy, a guy named Joe Wild, that I met during golf, and we just became really close. He was a year older than me, and he had a car up there, which was like, whoa, you know, afford him. And I was like, hey, I got an interview. He's like, let's take my car. When I had like less than $100 in my bank account at this point. And I drive up there. He's like, just don't over the gas, just do it. And so I go up there, and I want to look professional. So I borrowed my buddy's computer bag. I didn't have a computer. I borrowed my buddy's laptop bag. I went to the cafeteria, threw some apples, and I wanted to look like I had stuff in the bag. I had apples in the bag, okay? And I go to the interview, I'm sitting down, and I'm like hoping she doesn't ask me to pull out anything on my bag. And she interviewed a woman named Kate Cox, and she was like, okay. Interviewing, she okay, well, we'd like to offer you the position. It's unpaid. I'm like, yes, 100%. I have no money, by the way. Let me just preface this. So I'm like, how am I going to pull this off? So I go back to tell my buddy Joe, hey, I got it. And I was like, but like, I don't have money. And he's like, well, so I started bouncing at a local bar to make some money. Because I've been training pretty hard and got in pretty good shape. And so I was bouncing on the weekends to make a little cash. And it was just enough to kind of help me to get there. But I mean, it's about it's an hour drive in traffic. So it's like 10 to 15 minutes of gas, or $10 of gas each time. So I have like $30 or $40 in gas money a week. I have $100 in my bank account. The math doesn't equal out. So Joe was like, listen, I'll help you the best I can. So Joe, I mean, and this is, I'll do anything like that. He basically would put gas in the car for me to do an internship some days, or some days I might have to jump into a train and just hope for the best or whatever, but I got there. I'd get there super early, do all my work, but it was cool for me because I got to deliver all the clippings to Vince McMahon's office. And I got to build a relationship with his assistant, and then got to kind of have some interactions with him.
Huh.
And then I get to meet this guy named Tom Pritchard, who's the head trainer. And
he's on your list of influences, isn't he?
Yeah, he runs our wrestling school now in our building.
Yeah.
So I'm in Connecticut, I'm in the bathroom, and here comes Tom Pritchard, who trained The Rock and Stone Cold, these guys. I'm like, okay, I go, hey, how are you? Good, kid. And I'm like, okay, bye. And I would stay late, and I would do whatever I could to beat people. And then the gym downstairs, that was Vince's gym, you had to have a car to get into. When someone would leave, I'd sneak in just to see if I could get noticed or talk to people. And I'd stay like all hours of the night. I'd start building relationships and so on and so forth. And when I graduated from Fordham, everybody's like, oh, they're going to work at, you know, this place on Wall Street, or this place. And I moved back home and worked at Rick McGill's Toyota washing cars. Because I was like, I'm going to wrestle for WWE. So Dr. Tom gets fired a month after I graduate. And he moves back to Sevierville, Tennessee, where he's from, where his wife lives, Sandy Pritchard. And I was like, oh, man. And my dad
Did you know that?
I didn't know he was from Knoxville. No, I had no idea.
Oh, my gosh.
And I see this, I'm like, oh, this is it. I got to get him. So, again, reoccurring theme of the money. And I was like, well, how am I going to find this guy? So my dad had a marketing firm at the time, or still does. And their biggest client was Novation Capital, where they would go and they'd find structured settlement winners, or they'd find lottery winners or whatever, and then they would buy them out. Novation Capital would buy them. It's kind of like J.G. Wentworth, basically. It's competitors. Okay. And so what their job was to find these people. And it's like lead gen, basically. So they had this guy, Donald Fish, that could find anybody, right? So I said, hey, Donald, I was helping my dad out. I was like, this guy just won the lottery in Sevierville. Tom Pritchard, can you find him for me?
That's awesome.
So he sends me 11 names. Like, oh. So I write out this letter, edited it into the grammar. So I still have the letter framed this day. And I was like, I overnight FedExed it to all the Tom Pritchards. Overdrafted my account, but I don't even know how many dollars now. But like, it was like, you know, negative $40 in my bank now. And I overnight to him. The next day I get a phone call. I'm a numbers guy, as you know, and I get a phone call. 203-912. I'm telling Tom Pritchard's cell phone out here. 203-912, and I'll leave the 4 less out of it. And I was like, oh, it's a Stanford number. Hello, this is Devin. It's Devin Driscoll. This is Tom Pritchard. How did you get my address? I said, I just figured it out. And he was like, how'd you get it? So I told him, be down at this place in 2 weeks. So we go to a Jiffy Lube in Maynardville, Tennessee. I was was like, this is it, huh? This is awesome. And I walk in, no air conditioning, no heat, total, I like out of a movie. I still go there once in a while if I don't really need like a reminder. I go to this place. I mean, it was right past Union County High School. I was like, wow, this is it, huh? This guy's training all these guys, and he walks in. So you want to be a wrestler, huh, kid? Yes, sir.
Is he a big guy?
He's a good sized guy.
Is he?
And I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. There's nobody else here. He's like, yeah, nobody else signed up, just me and you. So I'm getting a one-on-one opportunity. And long story short, he trained me in there. A couple more kids joined.
For free?
Very, very little money. We'll just leave it at that.
Really?
I helped him out in different ways, and he helped me with that. And then started wrestling on different independent shows. And when you're in that stage, you drive 10 hours, you wrestle your rear end off, and maybe make $10 if you're lucky, and then drive back to the next show.
This is like the local 10 or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's called like independent wrestling is a whole different world. And
I remember driving on Chapman Highway one day, and it was literally a wrestling ring set up like in the parking lot of a motorcycle place.
There you go. That's
and they were wrestling.
That I call it it's like single A baseball. Like you go and you just it is what it is. I wrestled my first match I had. Yes, my first match was 8 people there in Bean Station, Tennessee, and but the thing is, I learned so much through that process. And about 6 months in, I see that WWE on their website's having a tryout in Houston, Texas, at Booker T School. So I apply. Everybody has these professional pictures. My sister took pictures of me in my parents' backyard. And I get it. I get the opportunity. There's 10 of us to go down into this tryout. I'm like, oh, these guys are all like way advanced. I got no shot. But I realized one thing early on. A lot of wrestlers aren't that tall. So I was like, man, I might have an advantage here because I'm taller than all these guys. And we get in there, and long story short, I got signed. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, they offered me a contract. And I'm like, go home, we'll get it to you, kid. Okay, cool. Quit my job, I'm all in. A week goes, heard nothing. 2 weeks go, nothing. Month goes, nothing. Month and a half goes. Okay, maybe this is it. I'm contacting nothing. So one day I go back up to Louisville, a couple of wrestling buddies I'd met, and I was sitting up there with them and did some matches, and I had a phone call from a guy named Tommy Dreamer, and he's like, oh, hey man, I'm sorry I meant to call you, but I'm moving into a new role, so here's your actual new boss. I should have called you weeks ago, I just got swamped. Oh, hey, yeah, this is Mike Bucci, here's your new boss. Hey, can you start in right Labor Day? It's like August 18th.
Start means you're going to go wrestle in WWE.
Correct. Can you be there in 2 weeks? I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. That's WWE. And so I grabbed all my stuff, found an apartment, moved up there, and started wrestling for WWE.
Did they, just tell us, what's your persona? How does that work?
So
do you have to come up with it yourself, or do they help you?
It depends. If you come in with an established brand that you've built on an independent level or some other company, 9 times out of 10 they'll roll with that.
Keep it, okay.
Where it gets kind of sticky now in this day and age is owning the rights to the names and some different stuff with that, where it gets a little bit more, there's some more legal bounds involved in it than there was back then. But back then it was more, if you came with a little name ID, they'll run with it.
Did you have one already?
I had a little bit. It wasn't to the degree that some other guys were, but it was in the southeast region. I had a little bit of a name, but I came in there and I was by far the youngest guy there. I mean, by far, I was probably 22. I mean, I was a kid, and I came in there. I was super young and really inexperienced, comparatively speaking. And you're in this group now. And then I kind of started with the younger group, and then a couple weeks later, I found myself in the advanced group. And I think most of it was just because of a potential perspective, but then. I remember when the riders came down and the riding team comes down, and one of my closest friends named Paul Burchell's, and they said, hey, you're going to have matches in front of TV, in front of all the McMahons and all these riders. I'm like, oh, I've been here like a month. Okay, great. And the other guy in wrestling is a couple years older than me, and he was like, hey, our boss comes in and goes, this is a make or break for you, Paul. If you screw this up, they're probably going to release you.
The other guy.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he had already been on SmackDown and didn't go well, and so... And he was kind of trying this new character out. And so he looks at me, he's like, hey, I think the way to get this over is we should actually really fight. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm going to be really physical. I'm going to beat the heck out of you, but fight back. And I said, got it. Okay, sweet. Okay, we're doing this. And so we go out there, and it's super nerve-wracking. There are all these major head honchos of WWE, and here I am, been in the business maybe a year, and I'm out there with this guy that's on his last straw to try to make it, and he tells me he's going to beat me up. So I'm like, all this nerves are going within my head, and I'm like, okay, don't screw up. End up going out there, and we went at it. And I get to the back, and went phenomenal. He got called up to TV, and they put the belt on me a month later.
Really?
Yep. So it was.
That's crazy.
I went home that night super excited, but super sore. But it was a great experience.
How long? I mean, I know you ended up having a pretty serious injury.
Mm-hmm.
How long was that?
Yeah, how long was it with?
Yeah, how long were you there? Before you got
A
injured?
year and a half, 2 years.
And you hurt your neck, right?
Yeah, so I was in a match with another individual on what's called a house show, non-televised event, and a guy named Charles Brown, great guy, or Charles Evans, excuse me, Charles Evans, great guy, was a really good friend of mine. We traveled together, and we were feuding over my belt, and I was their champion at the time, and I was like the young guy, and so I was not only the young guy, so it was like a lot of responsibility. And he picks me up for what's called a power bomb, so my legs are over his shoulders, and he would have dropped me on my back, right? And he slams you down, and he slipped. And so as he slipped, I fell, and he just drove my head first on the neck into the mat, and I couldn't move. I physically couldn't feel anything in my body. And so I finally got some feeling back. I told the ref to buy me time. I said, get Paul out here, the individual I wrestled in the match for, because we'd come really close because of that. I said, tell him we need to buy some time. So Paul ran out and distracted whatever, and I just rolled to the floor, and I finally started getting some feeling back in my hands and my feet. So okay, thank God. And I got back in there, and it was called like a roll up, right? Just kind of
You kept wrestling.
Oh yeah, and I walked back in, and I rolled them up 1, 2, 3, and I rolled out, and I just saw I had a really bad stinger. So I went to the back. I was kind of hunched over, and I told the coach, whatever, our coach Al Snow, and he was like, "Okay, we'll just get some rest." And over the next 2 weeks, I kept wrestling, I kept lifting. And then all of a sudden, it's like 2 weeks in, and my left arm is about a third of the size of my right arm. My left pec's about a third of my right, and I realized I could take a 5-pound dumbbell I couldn't get to here. I could take 100 and go here. And I was like, well, something's wrong. And so I went to the physical therapist next door. I was like, hey, I'm telling him what's wrong. He's like, all right, we need to get you to this doctor right now. So I go down to the ER, and they're like, how'd you get here? I said, I walked in, like, yeah, you might have a broken neck. I was like, oh, sweet. And I'm like, and this is in the hospital, the Jewish Louisville, I forget the name of it, hospital. It's out of like a Covenant hospital here. Yeah. It's a larger hospital. And the girl I was dating at the time, I called. She was a wrestler, and I called her. I was like, hey, can you come down here? I think something's really wrong. And so I had cracked a vertebrae in my neck and back area, and combination of that to severely bad cervical sprain on top of that, and then developed atrophy on my left side. Jeez. Because I was having nerves being shut down on my arm. And they were like, you need to take some serious time off. I was a champion at the time, and I was like, no, I can't, because I'm this and this. They're like, yeah, you could die if you get the wrong even little thing tomorrow. Wow. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should stop. And so I called my boss, and he was very upset that I didn't tell him something was wrong. Yeah. But I just didn't want to stop, you know. And so I took some time, and then I realized during that time away that I just didn't feel like it was the right place for me for a variety of reasons. And then I asked for my release in December of that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great, but you did it though. I mean,
that's crazy.
Like you went after your dream.
Yeah, no, and like so that's like when kids have national signing days. It's like I can really relate to that because I remember signing my contract on my parents' dining room table, and I have pictures of it to this day. And when I left that, I started my own wrestling company for a while, did that, and then I ended up going back to WWE for a while later, in different roles. Mm-hmm. But that, I wrestled for him again, and I did some stuff on the business side. But that time there really changed and molded me who I am today was because of that time there.
What? Any lessons from getting injured? Like, would you say, like, anything?
Yeah, if you get hurt, you need to go immediately to see somebody. Mm-hmm. I always tell our guys, there's a difference between discomfort and pain. Mm-hmm. And like when there's discomfort, you still need to discuss it. But being the tough guy doesn't mean being the smart guy. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many kids now these days that are afraid of losing their spot. Like that was the reason I kept going. Yeah. And in reality, I came back, and he was like, "Listen, yeah, we would have had to pull the title off you because we need to have somebody on TV defending the title. But with that being said, we need you here 10 years from now as much as you're here 10 days from now." And it's hard to think that way when you're in the middle of it. But when there is an issue physically with your body, you need to address it immediately. Yeah. And that's something I've been able to kind of like help use my experiences with kids this day, and go through. And there's a variety of other lessons I learned from WWE that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't been there, that I can now integrate into what we talk about with other athletes. Yeah. So
that was awesome. Devin's story is cool. It's so crazy to think about going to college in New York City when 9/11 happens, and how that just has an impression, like an imprint on you for the rest of your life, and shapes a lot of the things that you do and think and the way you see the world. So Stay tuned for episode 2. We're going to jump into his actual professional career, being a wrestler, moving back to Knoxville, building Next Level, building D1, a lot of cool stuff. So listen in.